Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving straight into something called the thought array. It's basically a framework that completely flips how we process the world around us. And the foundational premise here is just beautifully simple, but it goes really deep. Literally every idea we have starts with a single thought. But, and here's the catch, that thought is never, ever truly alone.
Seriously, does any thought actually exist in isolation? Think about your own life for just a second. Every opinion we hold, every little decision we make, even the beliefs we defend so fiercely, do they really stand on their own? Well, the reality highlighted in our source material is that they don't, not at all. They're actually shaped by unseen histories, ingrained cultures, emotions, and honestly, by conversations that happened way before we even formed the thought in the first place. We love to imagine our ideas as completely independent, right? But the truth is, they're always tangled up in a much, much larger web.
And that leads us to what we can call the illusion of isolation. We look out at the world, and we love to put things into neat little boxes. A fiery political debate over here, a devastating market crash over there, a massive social movement, a huge tech breakthrough, or even just a personal decision you make on a random Tuesday. We constantly treat all of these as entirely separate, distinct events. But here's the thing, they rarely are. When we do that, we're basically staring at the branches and completely ignoring the trunk and the roots of the tree.
Which brings us to the core philosophy of what we're looking at today. Everything is connected. True understanding, it doesn't happen just by memorizing facts about a single event. It really only kicks in when we start spotting the hidden, underlying connections between all these seemingly separate occurrences. And that's the whole point of this framework. It isn't here to hand you opinions or dictate what you should believe. Instead, it's a tool to help you think more clearly by exposing those invisible threads that literally tie the whole world together.
But man, getting to that level of clarity is tough, isn't it? Because in today's world, our biggest problem is definitely not a lack of information. Information is literally everywhere. The real challenge is actually making sense of it all. Every single day, from the second we wake up and grab our phones, we're just hit with this relentless barrage. And it starts with ideas, just an absolute constant stream of new concepts being hurled at us non-stop.
And right after that, come the arguments. Everyone has a point to make, right? And they're constantly bombarding us, demanding our immediate attention, and worse, our immediate emotional reaction.
Then, add the headlines to the mix. Just an overwhelming, rapid-fire stream of flashing text, alerts, breaking news, all of it trying to force a very specific narrative onto us every single hour of every single day.
And finally, you've got the predictions and the statistics. The talking heads telling us exactly what's going to happen next. And all of this noise, every single idea, argument, headline, and prediction, it's constantly inviting us, almost forcing us really, to just quickly pick a side in this incredibly loud and chaotic world. We are constantly pushed to just react instantly.
Okay, let's just take a collective breath here for a second. Because the absolute best antidote to all that noise, the ultimate defense against this whole information trap, is a pause before certainty. This is the crucial point right here. It's an intentional habit. Before you pick a side, before you fire off that angry reaction online, you just take a pause. In a society that totally rewards immediate outrage and instant answers, taking a pause before jumping to a conclusion is arguably the single most valuable habit you could ever develop.
But let's be super clear about what this actually means. This pause, it's not about checking out of society. It's definitely not a pause from your ambition, your work, your studies, or your life. No, it's a pause before judgment. It's literally taking a second before allowing someone else, or let's be real, some algorithm, to think on your behalf. It's all about protecting your own cognitive sovereignty.
So how do we actually pull this off? Well, the source material breaks it down into 4 essential steps to really cultivate true understanding. Step 1 is to create space. That just means intentionally stepping back from the immediate emotional trigger of whatever piece of information just crossed your path. Just give your brain a second to catch up. Step 2 is ask questions. Instead of just passively accepting the narrative you're being spoon-fed, interrogate it, actively look for those hidden assumptions. Then step 3 is observe. Really watch how the information behaves, where it's coming from, and the broader context surrounding it before you form an opinion. And finally, step 4, connect ideas. Take that initial piece of info and actively link it to things that might seem completely unrelated at first glance. It's exactly within this intentionally created space that real, genuine understanding actually begins to take root.
All right, so that brings us to section 2, the web of disciplines, or essentially how the real world actually works.
See, once you create that mental space we were just talking about, you kind of have to ditch this old, outdated habit of looking at the world in silos. Think about it.
In school, we learn psychology in one room, history down the hall, and economics in a totally different building. But major real-world issues? They don't care about your college major. The real world is just this deeply tangled web. Like, to truly understand society, we absolutely have to understand history. You simply can't grasp where we are without knowing how we got here, right? To understand economics, which, by the way, so many people treat as just cold, hard math, we actually have to understand human behavior. Because at the end of the day, markets are driven by people. And politics? We've got to understand incentives. You just can't untangle one from the other. The most important issues are always woven together from multiple, overlapping disciplines.
And, the exact same logic applies to time itself. If we want to understand the future, we absolutely must understand the past. And to understand people, we have to first understand how people actually think. It is all connected. You really can't look forward effectively without a solid, grounded understanding of what's already behind you.
So how do we start putting this all together? Well, the source suggests that every inquiry needs to kick off with really good questions. And not just because asking questions is a fun intellectual exercise, but because asking the right questions literally changes how we perceive the world. Whether we're dissecting artificial intelligence, geopolitics, or human psychology, the goal isn't just to explain what happened. It's about digging deeper. We need to ask, why did it happen? What hidden assumptions actually shaped this event? And what are the patterns connecting this seemingly isolated moment to something much, much bigger?
Ultimately, this explainer and the whole framework it's built on represents a massive shift in how we operate day to day. We're actively moving away from just endlessly consuming opinions and desperately trying to find absolute certainty in a wildly complex world. Instead, we're building a reliable framework for thinking. We're connecting ideas. And honestly, most importantly, we are seeking clarity rather than certainty. Because clarity leaves room for nuance, whereas certainty usually just destroys it.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty vital question to chew on. If this framework really works, if you start intentionally pausing before reacting, connecting your ideas, and seeking out clarity, well, that practice starts right now. So looking at your own beliefs, maybe even your most firmly held opinions, what assumption are you willing to question today? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helps you take that pause, connect the dots, and just think a little bit clearer. See you next time.